Damn it, Spanx, I cursed as I made my 10th lap around my neighbourhood. My girlfriend wasn't far behind, trying her best to call the stupid animal in her cutest, sing-songiest voice, with a few clicks of her tongue for good measure. "I think it's staying gone this time," I called back to her, though I don't know if she was choosing to ignore me or just busy shaking a nearby bush. Yeah, like the dog was napping in a damn shrub. It was a Christmas present to her from her folks, who didn't like me and knew I didn't like dogs. I think they figured it would drive us apart, but I managed to tolerate the smelly, drooly animal just to spite them. As I passed each telephone pole, I thumped each of our lost dog posters. I wanted to take them down and stop this frantic worrying about this animal's well-being. "Hey babe," my girlfriend called to me. "Can you go a street over to the cafe and get me a hot chocolate? It's so cold, and I don't want to freeze out here. Thanks." "Oh, well then maybe you should go back in, dearest," I thought. "So you're worried about the freezing in the 60-degree weather, but not the dog first? Jeez." "Sure thing," I replied in a half-sarcastic tone, looking over my shoulder to see her peeking behind a fire hydrant. I love that woman, but hell, she can be pretty damn stupid sometimes. As I rounded the corner on the next street over, about half a block from the coffee shop, a flyer caught my eye. "Dog found" was what caught my eye first, and then the picture of a lab that looked just like ours. I drew myself closer to read it, and made a mental note to see an eye doctor for new glasses. "Female lab found at 5:20 p.m. on Thursday, May 14th, on the corner of Liberty and Franklin. The dog is about a year old, black lab with a white, heart-shaped patch of fur under its chin, slightly crooked tail, and a limp on the left hind leg, brown collar but no tags, very friendly." Amazing, I thought. Someone found this damn mutt. There was something in smaller print below all the text, but I figured it was just the contact information of the person. Filled with relief, not for the dog being found, but rather for the searching to be over, I called my lady over. "What is it?" she asked, placing her head on my shoulder. "Oh," she said, excitedly, finally noticing the poster in front of her. "Look, it's Spanx," she said, reading the poster out loud, for confirmation that the dog pictured was indeed ours. "Oh my god!" she screamed and stumbled backwards, and began to cry very suddenly. "What the hell is wrong with you?" I asked. "Someone found the dog." She didn't say anything, only pointed weakly at the poster. "I don't get it," I said, turning back to the poster, and read it out loud, thinking I missed something. Nothing struck me as odd, until I looked closer at the small text. It read, "Tasted like chicken." It comes out of nowhere, and no one knows what causes it to appear. Like a curse, it will follow and haunt you, keeping you from enjoying your daily responsibilities, defying your common sentiments of rationality and grounded theories. The creature has been simply dubbed the greying dog. This is because from afar, it looks like a large canine. As you would imagine, it walks on all four of its legs and has a bit of a snout, although it doesn't seem to have a tail whatsoever. Its coat is a pale hue that has no colour, and it stands around 7 or 8 feet tall. When it appears to you, it will always seem to be very distant, and, at first, You may not even notice it in the background. Once you do see it, you will notice its artificial-looking gait. Its feet barely touch the ground, and it rocks indolently from its front to its hind legs, as if it was suspended or weighed almost nothing. It stays within your view and will travel back and forth, keeping its eyes on you. I would strongly advise that you ignore it entirely, for the longer you look at the creature, the more your surroundings begin to distort. Trees and buildings around you will seem to disappear, until the ground is flat and there is nothing for miles except the creature dancing before you. As you continue to watch it, it'll approach you little by little. It only becomes more mesmerizing the closer it gets. When it's at an uncomfortably close distance, you will be able to see its eyes. Its eyes are not that of a dog though. Its eyes are white, with solid black pupils that stay locked on yours. Its mouth stays ajar, revealing that it has absolutely no teeth, nothing but blackish looking gums. Its expression almost looks as if it was surprised. You cannot allow it to become too close to you, for it gains more control over you the closer it gets. But just remember that it cannot approach you if you do not look at or pay it any attention. The creature may moan lightly to get your attention, and will begin to sob and cry the longer you ignore it. When you hide in your home, you will hear it brushing up against your windows, and it will peer inside and look in at you through any cracks in the blinds or curtains. You mustn't heed it any attention, lest this will continue on and on. You should not attempt to hide in a closet or any place that does not have a direct link to the outside of your place, for it will come inside and wait outside the door to the room, and there will be no way to escape. While you try to sleep, you will feel it watching you. You mustn't allow it to know if you are awake. It comes into your room at night, hoping to fill your dreams with its appearance. If you keep your eyes shut and breathe normally, it'll leave before the sun comes back up. From time to time, it'll disappear and then reappear. But just as long as it does not know that you can see it and you are aware of it, it cannot hurt you. There was once a very old woman. She had no family or friends. The only thing that kept her company was a little white dog. The little white dog would follow her everywhere. One night, they were getting ready for bed, doing their usual routine. The dog was lying down by the fireplace, watching the flames dance while the old woman was in bed. She didn't let the dog onto her bed. When the old woman had nightmares, she would reach her hand down and let the dog lick her hand. Knowing that the dog was there, put her mind to ease. Right before the old woman was drifting into sleep, a news reporter broke onto the radio. Breaking news: a mental patient from the nearby penitentiary has escaped and is roaming around town. He is considered very dangerous. Please lock your doors and windows. The old woman was afraid now. She looked at the little white dog, lying by the fireplace, watching the flames dance. The dog brought her some comfort, and she tried to sleep. The mental patient wouldn't leave her mind. For some reassurance, she reached her hand down and felt the dog's warm tongue lick her hand. With that, she once again attempted to sleep. Unfortunately, the thought of seeing the patient watching her from the shadows just wouldn't leave her mind. She once again reached a hand down, and once again felt the warmth of the dog's tongue licking her hand. But this time, she noticed the little white dog, laying down by the fireplace, watching the flames dance. I used to be a 911 operator. Working graveyard shift, you get a lot of bogus calls. Seems like all of the crazies come out at night. But one night, it was different. An elderly woman called in about some noises in a downstairs area at around midnight. She said it sounded like someone or something was running wildly through the house, tearing it up, knocking over furniture. So, as it's protocol, we can't take any call lightly. 2 officers were dispatched to check out the disturbance. Upon arrival, they found that there was nothing out of place, knocked over, broken, or otherwise missing. There were also no signs of forced entry. The officers in question took down her information and just wrote it off as an isolated incident. All of us thought nothing else of it. The next night, same call, same time, but her speech pattern was a bit off when compared to the previous night. Like she saw what was tearing up her downstairs. In the middle of a sentence, she was abruptly interrupted by a blood-curdling scream. Officers were immediately dispatched. Upon arrival, they found the woman deceased in her kitchen. She had bite marks all over her body, and it appeared as if her throat had been ripped out. The officers requested backup, as well as animal control, as there may be multiple suspects or an animal on the loose. The officers split up and checked every room in the house. One officer went downstairs and checked every square inch of the basement. There was one door at the back of the basement that was locked. He called for assistance to get the door unlocked. Once unlocked, they checked inside the small room, only to find the remains of a dog. The rate of decomposition showed that the dog had been dead for well over 15 years. Upon further investigation, it was revealed that the various bite marks all over the woman's body, as well as the wound on her throat, were all caused by a dog. I found it all to be a bit coincidental. I took it upon myself to check dental records from the dog remains we found and compare them to the wound on the woman's body. They were an exact match. I resigned the following day and haven't left my house in over a month. Every now and again, I hear scratching at my door late at night. Around the same time I got the final call from her. I dare not check what it is, out of fear that I will end up the same way. The fog was thick as Bill Davidson drove home. He held a cigarette in one hand and the steering wheel on the other, all while screaming at his assistant through his iPhone. He was driving much too fast, the roar of the accelerator winding in time to the blood thumping in his bulging temples. He found that he really got off on bullying the people who worked for him. He stopped screaming into the phone as he felt the sickening crunch beneath his tires. He slammed on the brakes of his sports car, leaving dark skid marks on the asphalt behind him. Bill's heart clenched tight, fright and adrenaline triggering his angina. Cold sweat broke out on his forehead. He could vaguely hear his assistant's voice stammering out explanation as he lowered the phone from his ear. He'd been drinking earlier, but thought he was okay to drive. He clenched his eyes shut, afraid to look up. He had many infractions on his license already. "Please don't let it be a kid. Please don't let it be a kid," he repeated, praying selfishly to a God he only believed when he needed a favor. Finally, he opened his eyes a crack. He tilted his head to the rearview mirror. Relief flooded him like a soothing wave. Instead of a child, a shaggy brown lump laid between the tire marks. A long tail wagged pathetically. "Oh, thank God, it's just a dog," Bill muttered, wiping sweat off his forehead. He threw his car into reverse and carefully backed up the street. Distantly, he could hear his assistant's disembodied voice calling, "Mr. Davidson? Mr. Davidson?" Bill used the automatic switch to lower his driver's window as the car rolled up next to the animal. Lying in a pool of blood was a medium-sized brown mutt. Its right forepaw was obviously broken. It tried to rise and fell back to its belly. The dog looked up to him, whimpering. It wagged its tail feebly. There was a small bell tied to its collar. It tingled slightly as the dog struggled. Bill looked away from the dog and back into his car. It took a moment before he found what he was looking for. His cell phone, lying in his passenger floorboard. Flicking the smouldering butt of his cigarette over the struggling animal, he picked the phone up and held it to his ear. He resumed berating his assistant as though there had been no interruption. Putting his car into drive, Bill Davidson drove away, leaving the animal to wallow in its misery. He made it in time for his dinner, a huge rare steak, a baked potato drenched in butter, and 2 fingers of bourbon. The next day, on Bill's way to work, there was a huge patch of dried blood, but no dog in sight. Weeks went by, and Bill didn't think about the dog again. His wife bullied him into visiting the doctor about his heart, and the doctor refilled his prescription, but not before the usual speech about cutting out red meat, getting more exercise, giving up smoking, and reducing his stress. Yeah, he placated the doctor. He continued to do as he damn well pleased. Bill's wife, however, for reasons unknown, genuinely loved him and made it her duty to force him to live more healthily, which is how, 2 weeks later, Bill found himself standing on his front porch at 6:30 in the morning wearing a jogging suit. Bill had agreed to do some light jogging to, in his words, shut the nagging cow up. He still smoked like a chimney and ate as much as he wanted of whatever he liked. Bill shuffled off the front porch and down his driveway to the sidewalk. The morning was foggy and a little bit chilly. He power walked until he was out of sight of the house, pulled out his cell phone, and dialed his assistant's number. He slowed his walking to a pace that barely qualified as exercise and waited for his assistant to pick up the line. "Yes, Mr. Davidson?" His assistant's groggy voice answered the call. Bill hoped he'd woken the man up. Bill launched into a tirade of things that had gone wrong in the office and how they were the assistant's fault. His assistant just meekly accepted the criticisms. This just spurred Bill on. He came up with more and more insults he could heave at the meek little man. He knew he was getting into the zone as the veins in his head began to throb. "And those reports had better be on my desk by 7 a.m. sharp if you expect to have your job on." Bill cut off. He dropped the phone. It clattered off the sidewalk and into the street, its face shattered. He clutched his chest, which had suddenly gone tight. Bill gasped for breath as he fell onto his knees. His brain raced. Had he taken his medicine this morning? He couldn't remember, but this hurt more than usual. The feeling on his left side fled. From far away, he could hear the voice of his assistant. "Mr. Davidson! Mr. Davidson!" Bill began praying to a God he only believed in when he needed a favor. Suddenly, above the noise of his cell phone, he heard a soft, laboured padding coming up the sidewalk behind him. "Oh, thank God, it's a dog." Visions of Lassie saving Timmy from the well danced through Bill's brain. The padding got louder for a moment, and then stopped. Bill heard a faint tinkling in the wind. Here, boy. Go get help," Bill managed to wheeze. The padding started again. The animal came into view. It was a medium-sized, shaggy brown mutt. It limped on 3 legs and held a mangled paw off the ground. Its brown coat was matted, thick with dried blood. From its collar hung a dented bell. "Go on, boy. Get help," Bill pleaded. The dog took another laboured step closer. What little air Bill could breathe in brought the smell of infection and decay from the dog's wounds. When it reached him, it leaned down and licked his dying face. "Get help, please." Bill's voice trailed off. As his vision dimmed and went dark, the last thing he saw was the dog's tail beginning to wag.